Here we are again. Listen, this episode 2, I am excited about this. This has been going great. Listen, y'all showed out on the first episode. I thank you. I thank every subscriber, every person who commented. I'm thankful because you didn't have to take the time, but you did. You took the time just to go check it out. Even if you watched maybe 15 seconds of it or a minute of it, I am appreciative of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so we out there now. We out there, and like I told y'all in the first one, I'm leaving it to God. God got it in control, so we're going to walk with that. And here we are, second episode. Yeah. Listen, how's everybody's holiday going? Like we're like 3 days out from Christmas, 2 days, I think 3. Yeah. How's everybody's holiday going? My prayer is that you're having a good holiday, a good time with family and all those things. So listen, I've been thinking about something all week, and what's kind of really been on my heart is faith. Yeah, it's really been on my heart because we have this very interesting relationship with God. The reality is we can't see him. Sometimes we can't feel him. Sometimes it's hard to hear him. But it's faith that connects us to him. It's faith that helps us to navigate through life, even when life is heavy. Faith. And so one of the things that I've always kind of struggled with when it comes down to this faith thing is believing when I can't see it, or believing when I don't even feel it. Like that's the hardest thing, and coming to grips with you may not hear God like you want him to hear him, and he's not going to give you every detail for every situation. He's not going to give you play by play. That's just not how God works. If we go look in the Bible, many instances in when he told people to just go, he just told them to go, and he'll tell them the rest as they go. And I think that's the hard part with us, because we live in a society now that everything we it's like microwave. I need it now. I need to know how I do it. I need to give me everything with it. But that's not how God works. That's not how the kingdom of God works. Everything functions by faith. But one of the things that I've struggled with as of lately is this thing of walking by faith. I've had a strong struggle with anxiety and fear, but I want to give context to that, because maybe you might have experienced the same. So my mother had a lot of sicknesses, and I was a caregiver for my mother. And so every time we turned around, we were going to the doctor, and something was said. But the crazy thing and the most amazing thing about my mother is that she never let it get her down. She never let it overtake her. But on the flip side, what it did to me was create this fear and anxiousness about anything with my body, about anything in life, based on what I've had to see my mother go through. And never quite got over that yet. So there's faith. Faith is believing that God is bigger than what you see. That no matter what I feel or what the facts are saying, God is bigger than that. It doesn't negate the facts. It doesn't just say, "Oh, those facts are fake." No, the facts are real, but in the midst of the facts being real, God is bigger. That God can come down and give another perspective on the facts. That even if the facts are not what you want them to be, that God can use that for your good. Romans talks about that. Romans 8 talks about it. God makes everything work for the good of those who are called to his purpose. And that's the thing about faith. But anxiety is the belief in the wrong thing. It's believing something that's going to happen that ain't even going to happen. So it's taking and distorting faith, where faith in God is believing that God is bigger, that God can move even if the facts are saying something else. That I'm trusting and believing that God will come down or send a help in the midst of my storm. And so my mother went through all of these things, but she never let it get her down. She never let it overtake her. But on the flip side, like I said, I end up getting this fear of doctors, or fearing something is always going on with my body. So I'm always in this struggle of faith and fear, faith and fear, faith and fear. And sometimes I miss out on life because I'm so preoccupied in my mind by the fear of the what if. And I think that's where a lot of us can get caught up in the fear of the what if. And I don't think God desires to be there. I know he doesn't want us to be there. That's where trust and faith kicks in. That my situation may be saying one thing, but my belief in God says another. And so it outweighs what I feel and what I see. That's the thing that I'm always struggling with. It's an internal battle. It's not necessarily something physically that I'm dealing with. It's internal. Like, I'm internally always fighting with this thing in my mind and in my heart. Like, I know what God says, but what I see is much bigger. And that's normal, because we're more prone to believe the things that are right before us than believe in a God that we can't really see. We can't go visit God. We can't go knock on God's door and say, "Hey, can I sit on your couch for a minute? I just want to have a conversation with you." So it's hard to sometimes rest in the belief and the refuge of God when the facts are a little heavier. And that's where faith kicks in. That's where faith kicks in. And God doesn't expect us to get it right all the time, but he does expect us to believe that he has us in the midst of everything. And so fast forward, me and my wife had a journey with infertility. And you talking about faith testing and everything else. Listen, my prayer is for everybody who has had to struggle with infertility, who has had to go through that battle, and even who are going through it now. My prayer is that it won't overtake you, that it won't be a heavy thing on you. But yeah, for 2 years. And so this is how this works, though. This is how this worked. My mother passed away, and a week later, I find out that I am the reason why we can't get pregnant. So I'm like, okay, God. So my mother's gone, and now you hit me with this heaviness. And so, just trying to navigate through the grief situation, even in the midst of that. And one of the things about my mother's passing away was I really just had to throw myself into God. I really had to do that because I was a total wreck after my mother passed away. I had a lot of questions. I dealt with a lot of things internally that I had to navigate through. And so, unlike my father's death, my father passed away in '99. I was going into my sophomore year of college. And my mother was legally blind. I lived with my mother, and my younger sister lived with us as well. My older brother was out the house. So what happened was I had to take on the things that my father was doing. Meaning I had to drive my mother around. I had to make sure that all of the bills were paid, and not that I had to pay them, but that I had to get my mother around to be able to get those things. So when he passed away, I had to dive right into adulthood, and that was a hard space because I didn't have time to grieve. I had to run my mother around to do funeral arrangements. We had to take care of any debt, all of the things that comes with funerals. So I didn't have the time to grieve my father's death. And that was a moment in life where I felt like I was alone. And so I navigated life back then through the wrong avenues. I started hanging in the streets, clubbing, drinking, all of those things, because I never really went through the grief process with my father. So when my mother passed away, I went through the grief process, but it was a hard pill to swallow, like any death is. But this one was really hard trying to navigate through it. So I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for the village I had around me, my wife, and friends and family. Yeah. So fast forward, like I said, mother passed away, and then we get hit with this infertility journey starts, and that's when faith has to kick in. And so for 2 years we prayed and fasted. We did all these things. I remember we created a room upstairs. It only had one bed in it. Is all it had. It had one bed in it, one crib, and it had a changing table. And I would go into that room every morning and pray, just seeking God on, hey God, when are you going to allow us to get pregnant? So we started this infertility treatments and all of those things. And it was like a no every time. We started the IUI, and it was a no. And I'm trying to look at my wife, and I'm trying to be the man of the house and walk with her through this, because the medications that she's on are playing tricks with her body. Like, she's thinking she's pregnant, but then we get a test and it's not. And so having to try to walk by faith for both of us, and keep her encouraged, was hard. And so then we finally get pregnant. And the numbers when you get pregnant, there's a certain numbers that they're looking for to show that the baby is that the egg is progressing where it's supposed to, and well, those numbers were falling. They were low, and then they begin to fall, which led to a miscarriage. And so we're fighting with, on the one hand, my wife was like, no, this is it. We're pregnant. This is it. This is it. We're going to pray to God. God is going to change the numbers. But then on the other hand, I'm like, no, I don't think the number's going to change. So while she was walking in faith, I was walking in fear. And, we had this miscarriage. And so we had to walk through that. And still trust God, that God would come through. And I think the turning point was we started having some issues with the infertility clinic and how we were being treated. And so we had a conversation with our OBGYN, and this is when I guess this is when the epiphany came. So we're telling what's going on, and she says to me, well, what is God saying? And I sat there, and all I could say back to her is, I don't know. And I realized in that moment that all the praying I was doing, all of the waking up and the reading scriptures that I was doing were not really manifesting anything, because my fear was much stronger. So I was going to God saying one thing, but my heart was saying another. And my mind was saying another. So it was this disconnect. Like, how can I go pray to a God who I cannot see by faith, but not believe that he would open the door for us to be pregnant? So I'm praying to him, but yet I'm getting up from prayer, still believing that it won't happen. And that's the funny thing about faith and fear, that a lot of us may be going to pray to God out of faith. We're talking to someone we can't see. That takes faith. But the other part of that faith is, when I get up from that prayer, is believing that what I said to him would come to pass. And I was missing that second part. And so I did not hear what he was saying. And when I felt like I was hearing something he was saying, it might have been me. It might have been me making these things on the inside. And so she asked this question. I couldn't answer it. And we leave that evening. That question plagued me all evening into the night. Sunday comes, and she sends us a sermon from her church, and I listened to it. And oddly enough, it was a story about Abraham and Sarah. That's a story in the Bible where a lot of people lean on to when they're trying to get pregnant. Abraham was old, Sarah was old, and they were seeking to have a baby, and they did it the wrong way the first time. And then they came back, and then God blessed them. That's a whole nother story in itself, that they took it into their own hands. And so as I listened to it, I felt like there was this prompting in me that said, go back and do the last thing God said. And I had to go back and remember what I thought God had said to me before, and that was to love my wife over and beyond. I was already loving her, but to love her even more and focus on that. That's the last thing that God had told me. And even in that, he also then comes back and says, yeah, you're not doing IVF. Okay. So that's big, and I'll tell you why, because we were leaning towards IVF. We had the finances to do it. And so I was like, if all else fails, then we'll do IVF. That's the part where we try to do it in our own strength. That's what Abraham and Sarah did when they went and got the maid, and he had sex with the maid and had a baby. That's what that is. If God didn't say do it, then you moving on your own self. Like you're moving out on your own. That's not God. That's not God at all. And although it might work, because God is a good God, in that he will take what you did in your own self and still make it work. But when you rest in God, when you allow God to lead and guide you, he knows what we cannot see. So even if we would have done IVF, what if something would have went? What if something would have happened? What if even in that we would have came out with a miscarriage? So I say all that to say that I know that sometimes walking by faith means that I got to give up what I think will work and trust that God knows the plan from the beginning and the end, that he knows every single thing, every single detail of it. And so, yeah. So I told my wife, hey, we can't do IVF. And that's why we moved with it. We ended up having a meeting with the doctor and explain everything that was going on and how we felt and where we were and things of that nature. And he gets to this question, and he then walked us through everything, how IVF will work based on what we have going on. And it was like an 80%, 85% chance that we will get pregnant, not once, but twice. And he had walked through all this. And then he says, so yeah, I believe it will work. And so now I'm at this crossroad. I'm at this crossroad where either I have to tell him what God has said, or I am going to do what I feel based on what he told me. He, meaning the doctor, based on what the doctor has just told us, hey, I'm going to make a decision. So I was like, either I say what God said, or I'm going to just let him know that we're going to think about it. And so the moment that I thought about all those two questions right there, I felt like there was this like celestial tap on the shoulder and was like reminding me what was said to me Sunday night. And so I said to him, I said, hey, we're going to do one more round of IUI. And he looks at us with this shock, because you're not supposed to do more than 3 rounds of IUI. So we did 4. And when I said that, it literally felt like every weight that I was carrying, every worry that was on me, every fear that was connected to me, had went away. And I felt like God said, I just wanted to see if you was going to be obedient. Meaning, it wasn't about the IVF. It was about, was I going to be obedient to tell this doctor that we're not going to do IVF? Even when the success rate was as high as it was, God just wanted to see, was I going to be obedient? That's faith. That's the faith that God desires us to walk in. And is it easy? No, it's not. But when you do, the Bible says that you get a peace that surpasses all understanding. And it blows your mind. So we walked out of that place. I had never felt as light as I felt that night. And I told my wife, it's in God's hands now. So even if this IUI doesn't work, I was obedient. Well, we were obedient to what he said. So then we can move with the assurance that God has his hands on this now. And that's what we did. We moved on that. And needless to say, we end up getting pregnant. But this is so. Let me tell you about this. So fear tries to rise up. So we didn't want to take the pregnancy test because of the miscarriage. So remember what I said, that things we go through in life, traumas that we go through in life, they plant a seed in us that can be nurtured the wrong way, and fear begins to come up. And so we didn't want to take the pregnancy test because we was afraid of it, of getting to this place where if it was positive, you have to go to the doctor, and then they test, and that's where the numbers come in. And if you remember, I was like, the numbers were not good on the miscarriage, so we were afraid to take the test. So we waited like well beyond when you're supposed to take the test, until one night we just like, let's just take it. And the test was we were pregnant. But here's this part where we had to walk by faith again, believing that the numbers would be okay. And so fast forward, numbers were fine. Numbers were extremely high. And we go in for our first ultrasound, and the nurse is doing it, and she is like, there's one, and wait, there's two. But the way she's saying it is like, this is like normal. So we end up having twins. So God took us from a place where we was not having anything. We had a miscarriage, and we were struggling with hearing his voice. And it took a moment for me to be reset by someone else to realize that I was moving in my own strength, that I was moving by faith, and I was moving by fear. Not faith, I was moving by fear and anxiety. And God is, again, I have learned through my life that God is faithful. God is so faithful, in that he'll never leave us, no matter what, no matter how we feel like he might not be there. God is so faithful, in the meaning that he's always there. He's always there. I think it's just us that separate ourselves from him. Like, God is it's not like a shifting shadow. That's what the Bible says. Meaning he's always in the same place where he was. It's the problem is we leave him. And so then we begin to believe that God is not there. No, we moved away from him. You moved away from him. God is right where you left him. Whatever situation you've been in, wherever you are, whatever trauma happened, whatever situation happened, that became your God. And you started looking at that, and you started functioning through life by what you're seeing, and you left God right there. Like, you got to go back to where God is. And that's what that question. So like faith is trusting God. It's just trusting God in the midst of your situation. It doesn't change the facts. It just believes that God is bigger than the facts. That's what it comes down to. So yeah, we end up having twins, and God is just so faithful. He's so faithful. And so faith is our ability to lean on God more. It's putting our weight on him. It's believing that he can hold it up no matter what. That's the thing about faith. And even in the grief, there has to be faith there. It has to be some type of faith there. Faith puts you in a place where you're walking on the ledge, and you have to believe. You just have to believe. You just simply have to believe. I don't know a better way to put it. I really don't. But I have to believe that God will work it out for me. That as long as I do my part in trusting in God, then he'll come and do what I can't do. But let me put this disclaimer. So I don't really believe in the name it and claim it deal. Like I'm having faith for a yacht, but I live nowhere near an ocean or a lake. Like, that's not the faith I'm talking about. Because I also believe that faith without works is dead. So although we were believing, we were still doing things that was backing up our believing. That's good. Thank you, Holy Spirit. We were still doing things that was backing up what we believed. Like we were still buying baby clothes. We were still buying baby items, things of that nature. So faith it's just not this thing where, oh, I just believe God and I stop and I don't do anything. That's not what this is. That's not how it works. It's just not how it works. One of the things that I like to use as analogy is a waiter. And I think some other people use this analogy before, so I'm not the first one, so that's not what I'm saying. But a waiter, they're called waiters, and it's not like they're waiting. No, what they're doing is they're working. A waiter is working. So while I'm waiting for God to move on my behalf, I'm working too. Like I'm doing what I can do. I'm doing what I can do, and what I cannot do, God comes in. That's where faith is. That's faith. That's kingdom faith. That's what God looks down and he starts smiling like, look at my child. Look at my daughter down there. Like, the facts are saying this, but their faith in me and the works that they're putting in with it. Now, and let me give you this disclaimer too. I'm not saying that our works are the only thing that makes the faith work. No, that's not what I'm saying. They work hand to hand. They're a couple. They work hand in hand, because we didn't do anything to get the relationship with God. That was all Jesus. All of it. Our salvation doesn't belong to us. My pastor likes to say this, that we didn't pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Like, that was all God. Salvation and this reconciliation to us to have a relationship with God, that came from the Trinity. They had a board meeting, and this is what they came up with. That was from beginning of time. Like, you have to go, that's like, they already knew, because we owed a debt. We owed a debt that we could not pay. And God was like, I can't get anything from them because they can't pay it. So I need to take part of who I am, because I can only pay back what I need. They can't give me. So you know what? I'll send my son. I'll send Jesus, my son, and he'll step in the gap for them, be a substitute for what we could not do in our own strength. That's why salvation is not something you done on your own. It was a gift. It was all God. That's why I say God is so faithful. If you don't believe that God loved you as much as he does by this action of sending his own son into the world because he wanted a relationship with us. I don't know many people now in my life where they went through that much just to have a relationship with me. Like, would you give up your son and daughter to have a relationship with your neighbor? That's the reality that you got to think about. That God was like, hey, you and your relation and my relationship with you, me wanting to be a part of you is more than my son, and I'm going to send him. I'm going to put him down there to pay a debt that you couldn't pay. God is faithful. God is faithful. All he asks for us is to walk by faith and to do our part. And what we cannot do, he'll come on the back end and do for us. So I just wanted to share. I just wanted to share where I am with this faith thing. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. And I just got to believe that God will bless what I can't do. Just trusting him. That's what I'm trying to do. So if I could leave you with one thing, today, that fear will rise, the facts will speak louder, but your faith and trust in God looks at those things and say, yeah, hey, listen, my God is bigger than that. He is much bigger than that. And because I don't know the beginning from the end and he does, I'm going to rest in him and believe that he'll take control. Because if I don't do it that way, then I'm going to be in control. And then my emotions going to have me all over the place. And then my mind is going to take me here. And then the facts begin to outweigh. And I begin to make the facts my idol. And God is nowhere. And I leave him right there. So I need you to go back and get God. I need you to go back and get God. Go back to the last thing God told you. Go back and get him. He's still there. He's waiting. And he wants to walk with you. Listen, hey, I can't wait to see y'all on the next one. Listen, share with somebody. Please share with somebody. And I hope y'all have a good Christmas. I did say that I wasn't going to record another one before Christmas, but I felt like I needed to do this one. So yeah. So I won't see you all again into the new year. But I want you to have a great Christmas. Enjoy family. Enjoy the moment. Stay in the present. Don't look in the future. Stay present with what's going on around you. And I hope y'all have a great entry into the new year. And we'll see you.